Welcome everyone to the third and final video of the chart tangent video section, and this is all part of the intermediate guide, of course, and this will be the last video of that intermediate course. Now, in the last two videos on charts, we've gone through and created these awesome charts from the data, and we've been using it with the background thought of what is the best logic process to get to this position. And number two, what is the message that we are trying to communicate to its audience in the most effective way? In this video, we'll be just tidying up these charts to make sure the formatting is absolutely perfect, as well as talking to you about the different ways you can change formatting on your own charts going forward. And then finally, let's just tidy up the message for each of these charts so it just gets across that point to them in a really neat and concise way. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be talking about is understanding chart formatting. So this is an area in Excel. If we just right click our chart and go format chart area, there's actually so many options in here, it's ridiculous. On some charts I could spend all day going through all the different features in here. By default, it's going to come up with this field here, which is chart options fill. Now, depending on which area of the chart you're selecting, it's going to apply, a different setting. So, for example, if I'm selecting the entire chart, it's going to say no fill. But if I change this to solid fill, you will see clearly that currently we've got selected is the background. So I prefer no fill, but you can have a gradient fill, or you can have a picture gradient or a pattern fill, something like that. It really depends. It's just your personal preference, really. As long as it doesn't look unprofessional, I don't really mind how you make your chart look. As long as you can read the text and it gets the message across, then that's fine. So these are the different options you can use. You can change the background of the fill pattern or the foreground. You can also change the border here. So you'll remember in the first video, you'll note that the charts had this outside border. I don't like borders in my charts. I prefer no line at all. If I want to add them into, say, a PowerPoint, I can do it from PowerPoint. So I don't need to add it into the chart here. Same with titles, like you don't necessarily need a title if you're going to add that title into the PowerPoint. And if you're going to do that, then I actually prefer you do it in the PowerPoint. The reason is, if you ever need to make a change in to the chart, it means you actually need to go back to the Excel file, open it up, make the change, copy it in, replace it. Whereas if you do it in PowerPoint, it's fairly easy to update that and without actually touching the chart or the Excel file. Okay, cool. And then within the border, we can do different types of lines like we can ordinarily. So we can do solid lines, we can change the transparency of the line, we can make it a really thick border, we can change it so it's like a dotted outdoor line, and so forth. Okay, and again, it all depends on which element you have selected. So right now I had the title selected, so all those changes only applied to the title, not the outside, but I could do the same by selecting the outside. And see, now I've selected just this chart section, or I could select the entire thing like so, and then you could fill that, you could have a solid line, and so forth. So just keep in mind there's unlimited options of customization, but it will only apply to the element within here that you've selected. So some of the elements that you could select is the title, the entire square, just the chart element area, a particular section of the chart, a label on the chart. You could be the legend, it could be the axis or the axis title. So there's so many different moving elements in here. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so that's fill. What else have we got? So we've also got this, which is like the effects section. So this is where we can do things like adding a shadow. So if I want to select this chart here, and then I want to add a shadow, we can do that as well. So you can see there's already a little bit of a shadow there from the preset design that we selected. So we could choose something like this, or like this. You can't really notice the difference that much, but maybe if we change the transparency, it becomes a little bit more obvious. Can't really see it that well. You can add a glow. So you could add, there's some custom presets like this to make it glow. Let's change the glow to look like, we just removed the shadow like that. Change the transparency. You can change the soft edges. You can make it like a 3D so it pops out like that. Um, you know, can change the transparency one by one. Let's make this, different shape. So, it's quite a laborious process. You can get it like perfectly how you want it, but generally what we do is we just kind of stop at these levels. You'll notice that some of them already have some of the designs. So for example, this has got those rounded edges that we just applied around here. I wouldn't spend all day making it look perfect. At the end of the day, it might not even be used, or you might be just glanced over. So as long as it kind of looks okay, looks presentable and professional enough, then I wouldn't waste much time. You could spend your time doing better stuff. What else? Okay, so we've got so up here in this select button, we can select different areas of the chart. So for example, if I select this one over here, I can select each of the elements individually rather than clicking on them. So I could click on the title like that, or I could select the legend and I could just fill in that legend individually, like so. Or I could choose certain areas of data. So for example, revenues, it's going to select those three there because it corresponds to revenue. So I could make those, a different color. I could make those a green color instead, or a darker green and so forth. Or I could change the transparency. I could put a pattern fill in there instead, maybe something like that or that. Yeah, I'm just going to reverse all these changes because I kind of liked how it looked already. I'm just kind of showing you some of the options that were available. And let's get rid of this pattern fill as well. What else? So, yeah, I mean, really it just comes down to kind of playing around with it. So you can change your overlap as well. So if you want to make those closer together, we can change this. We can make them further apart or closer together and overlap like that. So yeah, like at the end of the day, it's just really what you want it to look like, what you personally preference. Let's go back and check the list. Okay, so we've talked about selecting chart objects by choosing them from the drop-down box over here. So we can choose a certain chart element that way. Like for example, revenue. We've talked about using shape styles and changing the color schemes. That's fine. We can change the color of individual shapes, so we can just select on one element and change that to a different color, for example. Just make sure that you actually are selecting the right one. We've talked about shape effects and line chart colors and the chart background and the format pane. We can, all of this stuff you should be familiar with in terms of changing the format and so forth. So probably the only thing that I'm going to touch on now, instead of going through each individual kind of option in detail, which you can probably do in your own time or not do it all because it's not super important, is just getting that message across. So what we're going to do now, and you might want to do this in the PowerPoint instead if that's how you're presenting it, but I'm just going to show you here because this is what I've got in front of me. So what we're going to do is we could either add in some word art like this, or we could add in a text box. But let's just use this word art for now. So let's just minimize the text. And for each of these, I want you to just have a really clear point, a message, what you're trying to get across. So we can say our message is revenue contribution equal by products U and A, U and B, A not contributing equally. And then let's just make this fit like this. And maybe we can fill this as well, just as a very light, maybe increase the transparency of that color so it looks a little bit nicer. And we can maybe change the shape of the box to maybe a nice rounded, something that looks quite aesthetic. And maybe we can have an outline of a dash or something like that. More outline colors, let's increase the transparency of that as well. So there's a nice little message box up the top. So revenue not contributed equally by products. Revenue contributed equally by products U and B. Or we could say, 80% 80% of revenue contributed by products U and B. You know, something that I'm learning, you know, as I get on with my careers is you just got to make everything super simple. Like, just dumb it down, get straight to the point. Don't if there's any words in there you can cut down, then do it. The senior people, the executives, they don't have time to read through, you know, a lot of detail. They've got a lot of stuff to do. So if you can save them time, they'll be thankful for it. So that message there is really simple, straight to the point. I'm just going to copy that message across over here. So the next message on this chart is, let's see, yeah, product A not contributing proportionally to group GP. Something like that. Okay, so it's a different message, so we're not repeating ourselves. And what we can even do is we can add in a shape like this. Oh, not that one. Insert shape like this. And maybe no fill, but the outside border we can make it this nice red. And then we can make the dashes like that, just so we can highlight a point that we're talking about in our chart, like so. And then let's just move these down so we've got enough room for a message. Okay, so let's copy these down. So just we've got to be careful that we're not repeating ourselves here. And maybe we go point 1, point 2, point 3, pretty much the same message here. 80% of GP. 80% of GP contributed by products U and B. So again, it's the same story, but just in case, you know, one of them didn't contribute as much as gross profit because of higher cost of goods sold. And then finally, product A not also lowest GP margin, 75% versus 80.4% group average. 75.2. We just got to make our decimal point consistent. You can't have 0 decimal points and then 1 decimal point over here. And then, just to conclude our point, conclusion, divest product A, invest returns in products U and B, which are profit generators. Something like that. Point 4. Okay, cool. So we managed in 4 videos to create some really amazing charts which tell an excellent story, get straight to the point, easy to read, point out the necessary data, and comes to a conclusion of what management should do. And all of this I had not planned out. It was simply just looking at the data and thinking logically and applying a process of steps to getting from a list of data and thinking, okay, what does the user want to see and how do I get there? And by following that process, I ended up with this output, which I think is really high quality. And if you were to present this to management in a single slide or 2 slides, they'll be very happy with you. So hopefully you can apply this knowledge to your own career. And that is the end of the intermediate Excel course. If you want to learn even more, look out for our next course, which is the Excel for advanced users. So thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time and see you next time.